Ron had been stuck inside his room for almost 2 years. Every morning, he grabbed his phone and spent hours scrolling, doing nothing, day after day. Nothing changed. No job, no purpose, just one question kept running through his mind. What am I supposed to do with my life? His friends were moving forward. Some had jobs, others were enjoying life. Ron could only watch their posts on his phone and wonder why his life felt so different. Then his father's voice echoed through the house. Ron, how long are you going to waste your life? When are you going to help this family? Ron stayed silent. He looked out the window and saw his father leaving for another long day of hard work. At that moment, one thought hit him. Will I ever be able to change my family's life? That night, Ron made a promise to himself. One day, I'll buy my parents a house, get them a car, and make sure they never have to struggle again. He didn't know it yet, but the first step toward that dream was already waiting for him. The next morning, Ron noticed an old soccer ball covered in dust sitting in the corner of his room. He picked it up and stared at it for a few seconds. One question filled his mind. Could this soccer ball really change my life? Or am I just wasting my time? Even though he was scared, Ron walked outside. It was the first time in months that he had left the house. At the local soccer field, a group of teenagers were playing a game. Ron stood quietly on the sidelines, watching every move. One of the players smiled and shouted, "Hey, are you gonna play, or just stand there watching?" Ron didn't know what to say. Ron took a deep breath, then he stepped onto the field. He had no idea that one small step was about to change his entire life. As soon as Ron stepped onto the field, everyone looked at him. A few players smiled, thinking he had never played soccer before. One of the players passed the ball to Ron. He tried to control it, but the ball rolled right past his feet. The whole field burst into laughter. Someone yelled, "He can't even control the ball." Ron lowered his head. Without saying a word, Ron picked up his old soccer ball and started walking home. His heart felt heavier than ever. On his way home, Ron saw his father working under the hot sun. He stopped for a moment and quietly watched him. At that moment, Ron made a promise to himself. I won't quit. Not until I give my family the life they deserve. That night, everything changed. The next morning, Ron woke up before sunrise. For the first time in a long time, he ignored his phone, grabbed his soccer ball, and walked straight to the field. The field was completely empty. Cold morning air filled the sky. Ron started dribbling the ball, making mistakes over and over, but he refused to stop. He fell, got back up, and kept going. Every fall made him stronger. Every kick brought him one step closer to his dream. After hours of practice, his legs were shaking. His hands were sore, but for the first time in months, he smiled. Day after day, Ron kept showing up, rain or sunshine. Nothing could stop him anymore. But Ron had no idea. A life-changing opportunity was closer than he ever imagined. Weeks went by. Ron trained every single day. Slowly, he started getting faster, stronger, and more confident. His phone stayed on his bed all day. Now, the soccer field had become his second home. One evening, after practice, Ron sat alone on the field. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Please, give me just one chance." The next morning, a colorful poster caught his attention near the entrance of the field. He walked closer to read it. It read, "City Soccer Academy Open Tryouts, only 7 days away." Ron couldn't believe his eyes. Ron folded the poster and held it tightly in his hands. This wasn't just another event. It was the chance he'd been waiting for his entire life. Ron ran all the way home with the flyer in his hand. He couldn't stop smiling, but deep inside, he knew this would be the biggest challenge of his life. That night, he taped the flyer to the wall above his bed. Every time he looked at it, he remembered why he started. From that day on, Ron trained harder than ever. He woke up before sunrise, ran for miles, and practiced until the sun went down. His legs were sore, his shoes were falling apart, but every drop of sweat reminded him of one thing. His family was counting on him. Sometimes he wanted to quit, but then he remembered his parents working long hours, and he pushed himself even harder. Finally, tryout day arrived. Hundreds of young players stood on the field, all chasing the exact same dream. Ron took a deep breath and stepped onto the field. His heart was racing. This was the moment he had been working for every single day. The referee blew the whistle. The tryout had officially begun. Ron touched the ball, and every eye was suddenly on him. His first pass wasn't perfect. A few players laughed for a split second. The old fear came back. Ron closed his eyes for 1 second, then he remembered his parents. He wasn't playing for himself anymore, he was playing for them. He chased every ball. He fought for every pass, and little by little, people started noticing him. Then, the ball rolled right into Ron's path. This was his chance, and he couldn't afford to waste it. Ron took one clean touch. The defender rushed toward him at full speed. There was no time to think. He quickly shifted the ball to his left. The defender missed completely. The crowd let out a loud cheer. Now only one defender stood between Ron and the goal. This was the biggest moment of his life. Ron faked a shot. The defender jumped. Then Ron pushed the ball past him and kept running. Only the goalkeeper was left. Everything around him felt silent. It was just Ron, the ball, and his dream. Ron took one final step, swung his leg, and fired the shot. The ball flew through the air. The ball curved through the air. The goalkeeper stretched as far as he could. Everyone held their breath. Goal! The stadium exploded with cheers. Ron dropped to his knees. He couldn't believe what had just happened, but the tryout wasn't over yet. One goal wasn't enough. He still had to prove he deserved a place on the team. For the next 20 minutes, Ron chased every loose ball. He defended. He passed. He gave everything he had. When the final whistle blew, Ron collapsed onto the grass. He was completely exhausted, but deep down, he knew he had given his best. Now there was only one thing left, the results, and those next few minutes felt longer than the entire match. The head coach stepped onto the field with a clipboard in his hand. Every player went completely silent. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. One by one, the coach began calling out the names of the players who had made the team. Ron stood there, waiting. The list was getting shorter, but Ron still hadn't heard his name. His heart began to sink. Ron lowered his head. For a second, he thought all of his hard work had been for nothing. Then suddenly, the coach smiled and said, "There's one final name." Ron slowly looked up. "Ron, welcome to the team." Tears filled his eyes. In that moment. Every sacrifice, every early morning, and every drop of sweat was finally worth it. Ron stood there in complete shock. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. His dream had finally become reality. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and called his dad. When his father answered, Ron smiled and said, "Dad, I made the team." For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then his father quietly replied, "I always believed in you, son." Those words meant more than any trophy. When Ron got home, his mom hugged him tightly. His little brother couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in a long time, the house was filled with hope. That night, Ron looked at the old soccer ball that had started it all. He smiled and whispered, "This is only the beginning." A few weeks later, Ron arrived at the academy for his very first day. Everything felt bigger, the field, the players, and the pressure. The players around him were faster, stronger, and far more experienced. For a moment, Ron questioned if he truly belonged there. During practice, Ron made a few mistakes. Some players laughed. Others ignored him completely. Instead of giving up, Ron stayed after practice. Long after everyone else had gone home, he kept training alone. Day after day, his hard work began to show. His passes became sharper, his speed improved, and his confidence grew. Then one afternoon, the head coach walked over to Ron and said, "Get ready, you're starting in tomorrow's match." Ron froze. This was the opportunity he had been dreaming about. Ron barely slept that night. He kept thinking about tomorrow's match. He knew one great performance could change everything. The next morning, he put on his jersey, took one deep breath, and walked onto the field. The stadium was louder than anything Ron had ever experienced. Thousands of fans filled the stands. His heart was pounding. The whistle blew. The match had begun. Every pass, every tackle, every decision mattered. Late in the second half, the score was still tied. Then the ball rolled straight toward Ron. This was the moment. Ron took one touch, looked up, and unleashed the biggest shot of his life. The ball rocketed through the air. The goalkeeper leaped with everything he had, but he couldn't reach it. Goal! The entire stadium exploded with cheers. Ron couldn't believe it. He had just scored the biggest goal of his life. His teammates surrounded him. The crowd chanted his name. For the first time, Ron truly felt like he belonged. After the final whistle, the head coach walked over, smiled, and shook Ron's hand. The coach said, "You earned this, not because of your talent, but because you never gave up." Those words stayed with Ron forever. That night, Ron called his family again. This time, they were all crying tears of joy. Years passed. Ron never forgot where he came from. And no matter how successful he became, his family always came first. One morning, Ron drove his parents to a place they had never seen before. They had no idea where they were going. The car stopped in front of a beautiful new house. Ron smiled, pulled a set of keys from his pocket, and handed them to his father. His mother couldn't hold back her tears. His little brother hugged him tightly. It wasn't just a house. It was every dream they had prayed for. Ron looked at his family and quietly said, "This is why I never gave up. Every early morning, every sacrifice, every setback had led to this moment. Remember this. Your life can change with one decision. Believe in yourself, work harder than yesterday, and never give up on the people you love, because sometimes the biggest victory isn't lifting a trophy, it's changing your family's future."